Hello everyone and welcome to the Savage Report. I'm Andy Savage. The adoption of a 2-year-old named Veronica is at the center of a national movement. Beyond the newspaper and TV coverage, there are YouTube videos, Facebook pages, and websites dedicated to bringing little Veronica back to the Lowcountry couple who were trying to adopt her. For 2 years, Veronica had lived with Melanie and Matt Capobiancos, who were in the process of adopting Veronica. But just this past New Year's Eve, their effort took a painful turn when they had to give Veronica back to her biological father. News 2's Haley Hernandez has the story.
For the past 2 years, they've worked to finalize her adoption. But as they walked through the streets of downtown Saturday, they knew it was their last few moments before being forced to hand her over to her biological father during a 30-minute transition.
I didn't feel like we had enough time for her to be not afraid when
we left her with strangers.
Yeah, to her, they're complete strangers, and I can't imagine that she's not going to be terrified.
Veronica's biological father is part of the Cherokee Nation, a Native American tribe. And although the Capobiancos say he waived his right to contest her adoption, he's now wanting custody. According to the Capobiancos, the Cherokee Nation attorney says due to the Indian Children Welfare Act, a law from 1978 that states Native American children should stay in Native American families, Veronica should be turned over to her birth father.
This law has been used unjustly.
The Indian Child Welfare Act is just destroying families like ours.
After months of appeals and requests for emergency stays, the judge ruled in favor of the biological father and the Cherokee Nation, saying that the Capobiancos had to hand Veronica over to her biological father and move to Oklahoma. I tried speaking with them on camera as they left Charleston with the toddler.
Do you think this is in her best interest?
I think so.
Have you ever seen the child before?
Nope.
Thank you.
That was Haley Hernandez reporting for News 2. Be sure to join News 2 every day of the week. Here with us now are two people familiar with the case, Jessica Monday, who is friends of the family, and MUSC child psychologist Elena Turk. Jessica, how are the Capobiancos doing now?
Andy, they're obviously very devastated. The mother works out of her house. The toys and the bedroom and the clothes, everything is still a reminder every day of Veronica. But they know in their heart of hearts that she's going to come home, so they continue to have hope and prayer and wonderful support from this community.
And what is your relationship with the family?
I'm a close friend of theirs. I was with them the day that they had to transfer Veronica to her birth father, and I just wanted to help along with so many others. They had supporters all around them, and we just said, what can we do? What can we do? This should not be taking place right now.
So you saw them as parents for 2 years now, caring for this child. It must have been terribly gut-wrenching. It was for me just to watch the video.
It was, and I felt like it was the most wrong thing I've ever seen in my life, and I just could not stand by as, yes, their friend, but as a human, and watch this transpire with what seemed like no interest in what the child's rights or best interest should be.
Well, let's talk about the child's rights. Jessica, let's bring in Elena Turk, who's a psychologist down at MUSC. And Elena, unfortunately, you see this more than you'd like to see.
We do. I mean, this is a particularly egregious case, but anytime we see abrupt transitions for children, we know that it's going to be extremely difficult for the child, especially when they're a young child.
I know how it's affected you, and it's affected me just watching it. But how is it affecting little Veronica?
Like any child experiencing traumatic grief, Veronica is slowly learning that the world that she thought exists no longer exists. Veronica had a history of security and dependability and a family that she thought was always there. But as the weeks have gone by, Veronica's world has shifted. Those ideas and beliefs that she's held are no longer available to her. When that starts to happen, we begin to see evidence of depression, anxiety in young children who can't verbalize because they're not cognitively capable. We see tantruming, we see nightmares, we see tearfulness and sometimes inconsolable behavior. Often these children develop behavior problems.
Elena, let me ask you about that, because it would seem to me that knowing this legal issue is pending and the indefinite outcome. Was this child, did the parents, the temporary parents of this child, have this child in a therapeutic environment so that she could transist into the possibility of going back with a biological parent? Or is this just something on New Year's Eve, bam, slam, she's gone?
Well, I think it was the latter. The child, the best a parent can do, of course, is provide that security and stability, but it's an impossible task to teach your child that, their parents are, for all intents and purposes, leaving you forever, which is what, could have happened here. And to teach that to a 2-year-old is even more difficult. We have ways and strategies of trying to make these transitions less abrupt and less traumatic, but that wasn't.
Well, let's ask Jessica about it, because I think we agree that the transition was awful. I think everybody can agree to that. You go to some lawyer's office to turn this child over? I mean, like the child is some chattel, somebody's vehicle or dresser of drawers or whatever?
Andy.
But I think, Jessica, the important point that I missed in this story is that I thought the adoption was finalized and that there was an effort to come in and grab this child from the adoptive parents when in fact they weren't the adoptive parents. Isn't that correct?
Andy, they were going through the process of finalizing the adoption. On the day she was born, they were given legal guardianship to this child. And to answer your question earlier...
But guardianship is not the same as parental rights.
Yes, you're right, but they were also going through the process of finalizing because, as you know, until a child's actually born, then you can't finalize an adoption.
Well, did your friends prepare for that? Was this child prepared for the fact that this might not be a permanent residence for her?
They did, and when they found out the risk that they were going to lose her, they felt confident that the South Carolina adoption law would be on their side. And the mother is a child psychologist herself, and so they explained to her that she may be going on a trip with some people that were going to take good care of her. They tried the best that they could to explain that you're going to leave. But I was also with them when they received the phone call. They had anticipating having another day or two with her, and they received the call at noon that the transfer was going to take place in 4 hours. And again, trying the best to help her understand as they pack her bag what she's getting ready to go through.
As a lawyer, I'm speaking now, this is another knock against the legal system. It just seems so cruel to me that a child is ripped out of the hands of the parents that the child knows and is turned over to somebody she doesn't know, biological or not. How are the parents now dealing with this? Are they making every effort they can to have the child brought back into their custody?
They are, and again, they feel strongly that South Carolina law should prevail, and especially in this case, and they have hope that the South Carolina Supreme Court will rule in their favor. We are pleased to say that it was accepted by the Supreme Court, and right now we're waiting to hear when that court date will be, and I can promise you the courtroom will be packed with supporters for this family.
Jessica, it's interesting because our producer has talked with some people who represent the other side of this issue, and he tells me that the father, the biological father of this child, wants this to be publicized so that the public will understand other things that went on in this so-called adoption and custody role of the parents. Is there something the public doesn't know that's favorable to the biological father?
Well, we are dealing with a very complicated, confidential situation because there is a child involved. There is the opportunity for interested parties to make a request that the final order from the judge be made public. And in this case, if that were to happen, then we feel that both parties involved should have an opportunity to respond to that. There is a request for a gag order and both parties have been cooperating with that request.
Who made the request to keep the public out of this?
The Cherokee Nation and the biological father's attorney made that.
Is there something to hide?
I feel strongly that the truth has been told and that this is about Veronica's rights and those were totally ignored.
Right. You've done a miraculous job in terms of social media. You have more than 20,000 people who signed your petition signatures. What will that do? Is there some legislation that can be passed? Is there some executive branch, the governor, I understand, has this petition? The delegation up in Washington has this petition. What can be done?
I would love to see the Indian child welfare law be amended. We all understand there is an intent and purpose for this law, and it has a very good intent. But we also have learned, as Veronica's story has come out into the open, The amount of emails and letters that we've received from other people have been overwhelming.
Elena, isn't this whole sad story a cautionary tale for all people going through adoption? Adoptions aren't final until they're final.
You know, I don't know that we can speak to what most adoptions look like, or you know, how this will apply to other adoptions. I think what it really is a cautionary tale of is how we manage transitions for children in the court system, not just with adoptions, but with custody cases. This child, hopefully, when this is all said and done, could have relationships with both families. Clearly, there are people that care about her and want to be a part of her life.
I wish we had more time. Jessica Monday and MUSC child psychologist Elena Turk. Thank you both for coming on the Savage Report.
Thank you.
And when we come back, there have been a lot of reports that a law called the Indian Child Welfare Act is at the center of this controversy. We'll talk to one mother who almost had her child taken away because of it. You're watching the Savage Report on Comcast C2, where we're all local all the time.